Welcome everyone. My name is Randy Howell, and what we have here today is a mixture of people who have worked with me either in a group level or an individual level, and people, this is their first time. And what I'm going to be asking in this, one of the major reasons I've invited people who have really worked with me is that I want to hear from you. Okay, I have found that the vicarious learning or the social learning that occurs not from me speaking, but from the voice of experience, a person who's been there, done that, has a powerful impact on people just getting acquainted with this work. So I'm asking, as we move through this program, this is going to be a little different in that I encourage you to ask questions as we go along. I may hold the question until I get to a place where I can answer it, but I'm looking for where there are questions, okay? And I want to address them then. This particular one is skill 1 of the 5 skills that I teach. So it's real live. It's the actual stuff that is taught both in group course and in individual course. The difference will be that we're going to be looking at it from an entirely different perspective. This is something where this is my current best thinking on this topic, and I've become more and more convinced that ultimately everything comes back to skill 1. Okay? It comes back to breath and being able to volitionally use breath to manage the biology of emotion. So as we go along here, I do, and particularly for folks I haven't seen for a while, I am so glad. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad to have the fellowship with you, and I look forward to this whole moment. Now, the way we're going to do this, if you want to talk, and I encourage you to, okay, just simply type in, give me the mic to Dolores, and what will happen is that she will flip the mic on you, and you'll have a chance to speak directly about some topic, okay? The other is that if you don't want to talk personally, you know, and some people don't have the mic set up, somebody, whatever, and stuff like that, you can just simply also write in your questions, and we will read questions as they come in or comments, okay? And the other thing is we do have a birthday boy. I'm not going to mention any last names, but Herman, the big 7-0, is today, so he's just beginning to get old enough to have a glass of wine. Thank you, Herman, and welcome. Welcome to this new one. I'm a little far behind you, but we're getting there. So now that we're ready to go, okay, what I want to do is begin to go, okay, this is the first skill, and I'm asking you to open your mind and to look at it anew, or to look at it the first time and begin to say, what is this stuff called emotional regulation? Okay? Because ultimately, what you discover very quickly is that before you know it, there's some really typical strategies for managing emotions. Who in here has ever tried to put their emotions in a box, leave them at the door, and then ignore or deny emotions as they trade? And besides that, who in here has heard the sagely trader psychology pop advice of put your emotions in the box when you trade? First of all, I know you have. I know I hear that all the time. I read it on the internet all the time. And what I know is that it doesn't work. They're all going, yes, yes, yes. We have a chorus. We have a chorus of yeses. And if you've worked with me, you recognize that emotions cannot be put in a box. Your body is the box. They're in there. Emotions are biological, and putting a bag over your head of emotions, all it does is it allows the emotion to really get up ahead of steam. And ultimately, here's one of the biggest problems that happens in trading, is the trader comes so blinded to the goal of making money. Who in here, when you're into some various training programs, saying, okay, the goal is so much money per day. Once you reach that goal, then you stop for the day. How many people have heard that, experienced that as part of their training? This is one of the most dangerous ways of approaching trading I've ever known, because if you're not a savvy, well-trained, emotionally literate trader, when you've already lost money and you're behind the wheel, okay, and you're trying to catch up, that's how you start revenge trading. That's how you start overtrading. The key is that the trader doesn't see that he doesn't need to manage making money. What he needs to manage is that he needs to manage the emotions that govern his performance of execution. Okay? And there's one guy in here, it's really Hitesh, and Hitesh, if you want to talk about it, I'd appreciate it. One of the things that he has a partner he works with where they work, and the one thing that he's focused on is execution. They're not, they don't, it's not like they're not worried about the trading account. Okay? What happens is they know that what they can control is the performance, the mind that they bring to the performance, the execution of trading. They know they can't control outcome. That's a big deal, because what happens is most people are taught right off the bat that you've got to really take a look at that trading account. Man, you got to keep up with it. Man, you look at it, and most people I know get really flipped out there. Here's from Phil. My identity can become fused to making money. Yeah, I know. And Phil, what I'll say is you and many traders are right there, and the problem is that when your identity gets fused to making money as a way of proving the self, of proving your mattering, proving your worth, trading becomes an awful master. It really becomes a dangerous demon at your back, because ultimately, again, the goal in trading is not really to make money. The goal in trading is to execute well. If you execute well, the money's going to show up. But the thing is, you can't control that part. You can control the mind you bring to execution. So, Hitesh. Okay. It's all about execution and trade management, not so much on setup. Now that's a professional trader who's not saying the setup's that important, and he's talking about the trade management and where he is in his evolution as a trader. Yeah, but what I want you to notice is what Hitesh is saying, that this is really about the management of execution. Okay. Okay, and here's from Karen. Through this program, I have been able to make execution of my trades what I focus on versus making money. Yes, that's the deal right there. That's the deal right there. That's the biggest transition from a struggling trader or a newbie, but struggling, know the same, and a professional trader, is that the professional traders, that wins and losses are going to come, that good days and bad days are going to be there, and that what you want to do is you're managing that ratio of winners to losers so that you're going to trade another day, and that what you can indeed control is the execution. Okay, here's two things. Here's from Chris. I'm learning to follow my process and the money takes care of itself. Yes, that's what you're doing. And what I want you to do is, I don't want to jump ahead to the third or fourth skill, but this thing all starts with breath, okay, and managing the breath. Paul. Here's from Paul. Define execution management as they pertain to this discussion. And management. The execution is the criterion you're using to enter a trade and decide that this is what I'm going to be doing. And actually doing it and staying within the parameters of your trading rules. Okay? Is what happens. How many people in here at one time or another have either gotten into trades that the rules didn't say they're in, poor execution of entry, or terrible execution of management of the trade, where you've got a market structure, you understand the flux that's going to happen, and yet you start seeing that thing go against you, and suddenly you jump out of execution. You know this is within the parameter of how much room you've given this trade, and what happens? You flip anyway, and you're no longer executing according to plan. That's what I'm talking about right there. Okay, and this is from Luis. Could I have the mic? Yes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off. And Luis, Dolores is finding you right now.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Dolores and Randy, for inviting us to this very interesting workshop. I wanted to share with you guys an experience related with money that happened to me right at the beginning of my trading career. Uh, I had a full-time job, and during my day, I managed to get into my account, something that I shouldn't have done, but I did anyways, and I remember that I did like 4 or 5 very successful swing trades. I mean, I made money overnight. It was like, $10,000, $12,000 at that time, and I was successful. And when I managed to do those 4 or 5 trades, I mean, not knowing really what I was doing, I was just waiting for the news to come about a couple of companies, and I knew that the companies were going to execute or going to perform well after their earnings. I was successful, as I said, so I said to myself, wow, this is easy. And I want to call your attention to the word easy. Say, wow, if I can do this, just placing a couple of trades a day and doing overnights, which I know now that you shouldn't do, because doing overnights with the day trading stocks is very risky. But at that time I didn't know, but I was successful. I had 4 or 5 trades with a good amount of money, so I said, well, this is it. This is my career. I mean, if I can do it like this, just working 5 or 10 or 15 minutes a day, imagine what I can do if I dedicate myself full-time to a trading career. And as a matter of fact, 6 or 7 months after, I quit my job and I jumped into day trading, knowing or thinking that it was going to be easy, and not knowing what I was going to find out. The days began to pass, and I didn't find the success that I had found before. I became very emotional. I didn't follow a plan. I was just getting mad and mad and mad because, hey, I had success before, and I need to have the success now. So what am I doing wrong? What is happening? So money, the idea of making money and making my account grow to the expectations, to the false expectations that I had created, became a nightmare. And every day I was in front of my computer. It was torture for me, because I said, hey, I need to produce, because I was able to produce before when I wasn't working this full-time. So now I'm full-time, so I have to do it. So to wrap up, I just want to close this comment saying that it's extremely dangerous, and probably Randy's going to touch on this before. I mean, all those thoughts that come from the dialogue in your mind, and those setups that you find, and you start having success easy, and then you fall into a trap, and you don't realize that this is a new career that needs discipline, needs to be rigorous, and needs to be perfectly executed every day, and then you are doomed, and you are going to fail. So I just wanted to share what happened to me at the beginning of my trading career that really affected the way I started. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you, Luis. What Luis is talking about, by the way, he could not have set me up for the next slide any better than anything. The point is what you're hearing is a very typical thing that happens to a trader, is the trader becomes blinded to the goal of making money rather than execution. Okay? And like when Hitesh was talking a little earlier, he was talking about it's all about execution and trade management. That's where you evolve to. And here's the thing, is once we understand that, now you begin to see there's a problem brewing. Okay? Luis has experienced it, but what happens is here's the problem. Okay? The problem is blowing up. The problem is blowing up particularly in the heat of a trading moment, where if you listen to Luis's conversation, hey, I made some money, I made good money. Imagine if I'm doing this full-time, man, I can make a lot of money. And then you get in there and suddenly you start blowing up. And the key, and this is what I want you to get, folks, is knowing how to trade but not performing in the moment is the gap between the stuck trader and the professional trader. This is what happens, this illustration of this guy blowing up, his head blowing up. is so typical of what happens, okay? And this is what happens when you're focused on making money rather than executing. Now, I want to make a clarification here, is that it's not as if when you have your business plan that you're not setting up goals for making money. You better, okay? That business plan is not happening in the midst of performance, though. What we're looking at is okay, I have a business plan and I'm having the future and I'm moving into that future. However, in the moment of execution, what mind needs to be there? Okay, what needs to be there? And if you confuse those two domains, business plan with a goal of the future and a performance plan of the moment, you have a problem. So now we define this problem that we're going to be working with for a while. The goal, okay? The goal is to manage emotion and mind so that you execute your trades with a calm, disciplined, impartial mind. Literally, what you're looking at in this image is pretty much what your mind ought to be looking at as you're looking at all those squiggly lines, as you're looking at setups, as those squiggly lines become setups, as they become entry points, as you're managing the flux that happens in the trade, as it either approaches your targets or approaches your stops. This is the calm mind, okay? This is what you're looking for. Now, I know very few people. It's really interesting. I work with a trader trainer who is an incredibly successful both trainer and trader, and he calls out his trades, and it's really phenomenal. And we're working together developing a program where we teach both trading strategy and trading psychology simultaneously. And he says, Randy, you know, I never had this problem. I never had this problem. It was always easy for me to trade. I never had all these problems with emotions that I see my people having, but I see them having them, and I need to do something about it. What you will discover in trading, when you start seeing some of these guys who really have very little trouble, okay, and they get in and they just are able to manage the emotions in a way that the typical person can't. Usually what you're looking at is high-functioning autism, something that we call in the mental health field Asperger's syndrome. When you're around these people, what you discover is they don't enter emotionally very well in relationships and things like that. They're kind of loners, and they will talk, man, you give them a topic to talk about, and they can talk about it ad infinitum, and they also do not have the wiring in the emotional brain that allows them to experience emotion, particularly fear, as a typical human being does. This guy that I'm talking about is a lot like that too. Because he says, oh yeah, that's really true. That's interesting. Boy, I can get caught trading all day long, but you know, I only have about 2 friends. You know, and you begin to see that. For the rest of us, normal populations really have to train mind. Okay, we have a comment here. It's from Karen. And be okay, calm, if the trade does not work. Yeah. Is as you progress in my work, you discover that when there is a loss, okay, is there's really only 3 questions. Okay, a loss is just simply possibly a mistake. The very first thing is you ask, is this a method mistake? Okay, and that just gives you the opportunity of correcting the mistake. Is it a psychological mistake? This is an opportunity to get to know yourself better to build performance mind. Or was it just simply being on the wrong side of probability? There's nothing a trader can do about that, and you move on. If you're finding high probability trades and have a calm, disciplined, impartial mind that you bring to it, and a methodology that does in fact produce a darn good winning percentage, and you have the ability to manage the trade, have that ratio, like when Hitesh is talking about managing the trade, what he's really talking about is managing, well, what I'm thinking he's talking about is managing the ratio of winners to losers. Okay, is that a really good trader simply has the emotional intelligence, the calmness, not to throw bad money after good money after bad. So here's the mind that we're looking for. Okay, and what we're saying is, okay, now we have to go. Okay, now we know what we want. We know we want this mind that is built in calm, discipline, impartiality, that is actually executing the trade. Then the question, how do you go about training your mind for this peak performance? To do that, we're going to have to start relearning a lot about emotion, okay? And particularly its impact on thinking. Emotion, my promise to you, is simply not what you think it is, okay? And then you go, well, Randy, God, we were talking about this globalness of emotion. And then you go, why is emotion and its management so important to success in trading? Why don't just leave the darn emotions at the door? Why can't I just disconnect from them, okay? The reason is that your body is the embodiment of emotion, okay? Literally, your body houses emotional reactions to the environment. And when that happens, the emotion takes over mind. There is an enormous deception, self-deception, about trading without emotions. They believe, you'll hear the pop psychology says, don't trade with emotion. You're impartial, you're dispassionate. Dispassion, impartiality, is in fact an emotional state. Okay? It's a highly prized one at that for trading, but it's an emotional state. And the key is that there is no such thing as freedom from emotion in trading. What there is freedom of emotion in trading. And this is the difference between failure and success. So the key is, if you're putting that paper bag over your head and denying your emotions, what you're doing is, what you're seeing, these expressions of emotional mass are in fact happening, but what happens is you have put them underground, where they become enormously difficult to work with. And the real key is, now how do you go about managing this? And ultimately, there is a shift that has to happen in the way you think. It's the first thing is you have to finally recognize a very important fact, is that all thinking is emotional state dependent. And by the way, thank you, Shane, for this image. Okay? The key is this. Whatever kind of thinking, and if you want to know what does it mean, all thinking is emotional state dependent? Well, put yourself, one of the most common problems in trading is, first of all, there's a perceptual mind that says, to be successful, to make money in trading, I have to be trading. I have to be doing something. And what they will do is, a trader like this will turn on his computer and the charts come up and he starts looking at stuff and he sees all these lines, whatever they're Elliott waves or whatever candlesticks, whatever, all these squiggly lines. And what happens is that he has already a bias to act. I have an urgency. I have to act. I have to act. He's already polluted his mind. He's already thinking from urgency. And what you discover very clearly is that successful traders are enormously patient lot of people. If they miss trades, okay, well, I need to do a little better than that. But the thing is, they know not to chase trades. They know that you have to be patient to let the trade come to you. And even if they lose, they're not putting up and says, well, gee, I have to make this much money before I quit for the day. No, they're saying, no, the one trade at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 second at a time, 1 trade at a time. And the point, though, when you deny this part of the self, and I would call it the shadow, what I would call your dragons, the denied emotional beliefs become the hidden demons that sabotage your trading performance. And don't ask me, don't say, oh, that Randy's the expert. I don't agree with him. That's BS. Ask your trading account. If you blow up, if you choke, what you're looking at is what you are. That's perfect evidence that you do not have the skill sets present to be able to face the dragons within you, the monsters within you. And the key is you're going to have to learn how to do that. And the how is a process, and if you've ever been around me, what you discover is that the very first thing you have to do is you have to start learning how to manage emotions, okay? And you have to start developing emotional intelligence rather than staying in emotional ignorance, with Trading Mind. As you start developing emotional intelligence, and that's really what we've just been talking about. We've been looking at, well, what is an emotion? Where is this stuff? And we've still been talking about like emotion as if everybody knew what an emotion was. Okay? We don't. But, no, stay. But the first thing is you start going, okay, I want to define emotional intelligence. Okay? When you take the bag off the head and actually get out of denial of the emotional nature of your biology and mind, and you say, oh man, oh my God, right brain and left brain have to work together. If I'm only in left brain, I am going to lose. You can know how to trade. There's lots of people. I will work with numbers of people each year that the last thing they want to do is come talk to me and pay me to teach them how to develop the right side of the brain. They have said uncle because they realize there is a flaw in the way that they have learned to trade. They have great knowledge, they have great know-how, but they don't have emotional intelligence. They don't know how to use emotion to be able to drive their knowledge well. And the key is it really comes down to this. Emotional intelligence has the ability to choose and use emotions effectively. What you're talking about, when you take a look at this picture of this guy, this is what happens with a trader. No matter what the problem is, the breakdown you have in trading, whether or not it's at setups, whether or not it's at entry, whether or not it's actually in the trade management and falling apart, whether or not it's taking losses or beating yourself up, okay? There comes a moment where you can color emotionally the kind of thinking you're going to interpret the future with. As long as you're in a certainty-based mind, you're going to lose in trading. You might get lucky like Luis was talking about for a while, but eventually it catches up with you because there is no certainty. And you have to say, well, you know, the thing is, I can't control outcome. However, what I can control is I can control the mind that engages uncertainty, confusion, and ambiguity, and not allow it to transform into fear, because at the moment fear hits, you know, you're toast. So you have a choice in terms of emotional intelligence of looking at the same situation and basically being anxious and foreboding about it, or you can have a calm, disciplined mind and you can engage the uncertainty. And the truth is that in quantum mechanics, it's really interesting because at some moment what happens in quantum mechanics is that there is no such thing as energy, there is no such thing as matter. What there is potentiality, there is possibility, and there is an observer of that possibility. And based on the beliefs of the observer being projected onto the potentiality, the totality of potential, that's the reality that's brought forth. Nowhere is it better demonstrated and illustrated in trading. You know, this trader trainer I was telling you about, what he does is that he says, you know something, I'm calling out these trades and I'm talking, I'm not a bad guy, I'm not shouting or screaming at people, and people will not take it because all of a sudden they're seeing a negative future. And, you know, Jeff's saying, what I'm seeing is a great possibility. I've got the right the risk to reward ratios going, and I know and feel this market structure. And I'm going to sit with this thing because I know that these things are high probability trades, enough to stay in the numbers, because it's a numbers game. It's not a certainties game, it's a numbers game. So ultimately you have this, and what you'll discover is that I am, in my heart, I am both an emotional intelligence guy, and I have forcibly bonded Jungian archetypal work into emotional intelligence. And the one thing that I can promise you is this, is that seeing is not believing, okay? Believing is seeing. That was the difference in the slide before, where the guy's seeing the same thing, but he's interpreting it differently. And my promise to you, and this is actually a quote from Carl Jung, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Okay? This is where emotional regulation intelligence is essential. We have destructive forces within us that we have learned to be scared of, and we're fearful of our fear. And as long as we're there and don't know how to control it, it controls our trading and our life. But the problem in trading is that trading is so darn fast. The speed of trading is so fast compared to the speed of life. Okay, here's some fill. When you're passionate about the ratios and we believe in the probability, it's easier and easier to embrace uncertainty. It's true, but Phil, I would ask you to take a look at the word passionate. Is that, from my viewpoint, is I am training traders when they are trading. Okay, I'm not talking about when they're not trading and stuff like that, but while they're in the execution, they're in the performance, is that there is only calm, disciplined impartiality. That's the focus. Is your passion often ends up being euphoric. Euphoric is an emotional state that really forces a kind of thinking that's not good. The point is that you're going to discover, whether or not you like it or not, you're projecting emotionally charged beliefs upon the market, and that is what you see. Managing the emotions that govern the mind that trades is the first step to building the trader's state of mind. Now, this right here would be something further down the line, is when you come into the dark side of the internal dialogue. This is the kind of stuff that you're getting here. To get to the dark side of the internal dialogue, there's a lot of work that has to be done so that you can manage the emotional intensity of it. Okay, we have a comment. Here's from Karen. As humans, we don't like uncertainty, but in trading, each trade's outcome is uncertain despite the probability. Absolutely. And this is Chris. I get so close to getting there, but then fall back. Well, Chris, this is a competence issue, and this is something that you can train to. And you learn first the breathing. Okay? That's where we are. You can do that. And this is from Karen again. For me, understanding this has really helped me with my emotions. Breathing and being able to watch myself helped me to recognize the fear that I had and that I was unaware of. Yes, that's what we're really getting at. And here's from David. I have the belief that every trading strategy works. What screws it up is your own emotions and the psychological makeup. Yeah. Well, I would say that a lot of people I work with, when they start getting their head together and they start having pretty stable psychology that they're bringing into trading, what they discover for some reason is that the methodology they're using isn't working as well as they thought it was working. And what they do is they go and they have to tweak it, or they have to find another teacher that can actually teach at a higher level of skill. And what you will discover if you go to a Traders Expo is there's a lot of junk being sold that just simply does not work. And you buy a song and a dance, and it takes a while to extract yourself, and you start building other stuff. Okay, and here is from Jeff. I just finished the group course. I struggle with the fact that I become too conservative about booking profits for the day. I hesitate to take more valid trades. I don't feel any conscious fear, but more of not completely in the zone, or more like that's good for the day. How do I get refocused, and what part of the training should I focus on? Okay, right there, this is going to be a little bit more advanced than I want to say, but I'm going to address this for you, okay? Jeff, you may not feel the fear. What you're doing, though, in a slide or two, you're going to start seeing the components of an emotion. And you're going to start noticing is that some people do not feel emotions. What they do is they start noticing the emotional motivation. What you're doing is you're noticing the avoidance of the emotional motivation. Avoidance is the motivation of the emotion fear. So you go, okay, I don't feel it, but I see it's there. I'll give you an example from my own life, is that I grew up in an enormously chaotic home where You just had no idea what was going to happen. You did know that things were going to blow up no matter what, okay? And I learned how to live in that chaos, and I learned how to manage it as if I was calm, I was stable, and everything was cool. And later, I grow up, and darned if I didn't end up owning a small advertising agency. And if you've ever been around advertising, you realize it is not even controlled chaos. It is crazy. And I'm sitting there, and one day, I have all these fever blisters that occur, okay, and I have these little pimple red things between my fingers. And I know that this is stress. I know that stress has compromised my immune system. That's what the fever blisters are about, and so were these little things. I never felt fear. However, when I started looking at it, I'm going, oh, these are somatic symptoms of fear. I'm under stress. That's cortisol. And so the feelings are based on fear. So I ended up having to learn to reconstruct what the feeling state of fear was. And what I will say is it was kind of good and bad news. I'd never felt fear, and I started feeling fear, and it was really uncomfortable to have to deal with. But what you're talking about is exactly that. One more, okay, and this is from Charles. Is the Jung quote saying we must bring the unconscious fears into our conscious awareness? Absolutely. Absolutely. All the unconscious fears are, I don't like the word unconscious so much as I do out of awareness, is that what we're doing when you're getting into your shadow and you're getting into the monsters that lurk in your mind, what you're doing is you're looking at denied emotions, denied emotional trauma, denied senses of uncertainty. And ultimately what happens is our job is to be able to build the emotional regulation and build the organization of self that allow us to face that dragon. Okay? And what you discover is that the dragon carries enormous gifts with it when you're able to manage that darkness and bring it into the light of awareness. It has gifts, but it takes work. Okay? Now, what I want to do, I want to stay focused, because ultimately what we're here to do is we're here to learn to manage emotional arousal in particular. So what we're doing is, before you get to these self-limiting beliefs, this is what I tell people. I said, look, I'm going to tell you something. Do not get carried away yet. You are not going to face any of the things that you've been avoiding for a long time until you have the skill sets to be able to do it. Okay? And you're going to learn to be able to manage the intensity of an emotion before you do it. When I was a card-toting practicing therapist, the populations I worked with tended to be more of the tougher populations. I worked with anger management with violent prisoners. I worked with anxiety and anger management of at-risk youth and their families. And I also worked with a lot of anxiety and panic disorders, and particularly post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? And in a panic attack, okay, once you're having a full-fledged panic attack, the person who is having a panic attack really truly thinks they're going out of their mind. They think they're having a heart attack. You know, their heart is just palpitating like crazy. They're just going nuts. And if you're driving a car on a freeway, it's just really nerve-wracking. And ultimately, though, is what you are having in a panic attack, you are actually getting an emotion that has exploded into brain, into body, and you have enormous amounts of cortisol and adrenaline in the system. And they are producing wackoness, and it's going to take, and literally what you first teach those people is that you're going to have to breathe this thing down. It's way past these Jedi tricks that I teach with the mind. It comes down to breath, it comes down to relaxation, and you're not going to even get to the muscle relaxation for about 20 minutes before you can start calming the body down. You're going to start taking control of breath, because what you're going to be noticing when you're in a panic attack, you're not hardly breathing at all, and if you're breathing, it's with the top 6 of your lung, and you're just, like I said, you're stressing the body out. And by going back to the bellows breathing, which you're going to be learning in a few minutes, is that you can ultimately get control of the emotional state. You can calm the system down, and sometimes it takes 45 minutes, but then you sit by the freeway and you calm yourself down. When the cop comes by, you just tell them you're having a panic attack and your therapist has taught you how to calm down. This is what actually happened, okay? And you're just calming down the body, and the cop will just hang out with you till you get it done and can drive off, okay? But it's the same thing that we're talking about, is you're learning how to manage that emotion. Okay, and here's from Victor. This program has caused that since I've been through it, I have not experienced panic in trading. Far more calm. There you go. And Victor, what I would say is most likely you're really becoming attuned to your breathing. Okay? It's practically every person I've met that really had anxiety attacks or panic attacks is what they're doing is they're really managing their breath, their relaxation of tension, and they're also finding higher elements of the self that come later, and that's not today, to be able to manage the fear of what we would be calling the orphan. So now what we're doing is we know that we have to be able to regulate emotion. But now this begs the question, what is an emotion? What is an emotion? And what I want you folks to get, and this is intentional, you're looking at neurons here, okay? Or you're looking at neurons firing. Literally, these lights you're seeing, that is thought. That is thought as a biological behavior, okay? And what you're getting is, and then understand this, is all thought is emotional state dependent. It goes back to this. Then you take one step back and say, oh my God, wait. Randy's also saying that emotions are biological. We embody the emotion. Yeah. So now you're getting going, okay, what is an emotion? Now this may seem textbook and it may seem more science than trading, but friends, I want to tell you, we can give a few examples real fast and it's going to make a lot of sense in trading world too. And this is what you need to get. Man, you got to get your biology under management. Emotions are adaptive and automatic responses to signals in the organism's environment that become wired into reactive survival circuitry of the brain. Whoa. Well, okay. There you go. You get into a trade, everything's fine, and you hear and this is actually from Danny. I love this. This is something he talked about one time. You get into it, and at order fill, cha-ching, and all of a sudden he starts noticing he's fixated. He starts noticing he's quit breathing. He starts noticing that his body's tense. And what he learned to do was go, oh my God, I'm going to have to train myself right then and there. This is an adaptive response. I already have this reactive survival circuitry that's just fired. And you can tell by that fixation. Okay? And what he's having to do is he's having to interrupt it because the pattern's there. It's been fired, and it's a locomotive, and he's going to have to get the steam out of it before it gets up head of steam and goes out of control. Okay, the second thing, this is where it's powerful. Emotions are triggered by any deviation or perturbation to a successful standard sensorial pattern that's already established by the brain to keep the organism in homeostasis with the environment. What that means is, before you start trading and you're just sitting there and there's no big deal and, you're just taking a break, that's homeostasis. There's, I had a guy in my office today where what he's doing, he has a machine that rates his pulse, okay, and it goes from green, which is good, blue, which is marginal, and red, which is danger, danger, danger. And literally what we're doing is we're going over stress reduction exercises about his trading, and what we're doing is we're watching his machine go to the red, and then he's calming it down. What he's doing is he particularly when entering the trade, literally what happens when that trade starts going against him, he goes nuts, okay? Even though it's within his structure, he's got the market structure down, he has confidence in his system, it works out a lot if he doesn't jump out of it, if he executes well. And what he's doing is he's realizing, oh my God, I'm seeing this homeostasis, I'm okay until I get in the trade, and then, man, they got my money, and all of a sudden the saber-toothed tiger's after me. There's your pattern. It's triggering, and he's watching the pulse on it. And just to let you know, as I'm now beginning to experiment with biometric feedback systems to apply to my work too. So, okay, here's a comment. Here's from Karen. I heard someone call that tickitis. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It is tickitis. Okay, Ron. Doris is giving you the mic, and you should be on right now.
Okay, very good. Say good evening to all. I've been working with Randy, actually just celebrating, I guess, our one-year anniversary. I was fortunate to find Randy just a year ago, August.
And I still love you, Ron.
And Rudy sends his regards to Buddy. Anyway, I look at the one of the early things that Randy said when we started working together was, you know, the way you look at trading, trading is really a proxy for learning about yourself. And I tell you, I think about that every day because it's very true. The way I look at trading today versus a year ago is very, very different. I used to have the opinion, and probably read the same books as a lot of you, you know, in this class, you know, Mark Douglas, excuse me, etc. But when it came down to the technique to actually try to manage emotion, this is where I learned my skills. And I just want to relate a couple of things here and then move on. First of all, I'm not looking to eliminate emotion. I'm looking to manage it because although charts that I look at, first I'm a currency trader and I do trade full-time, and looking at the charts, the visual aspect is important, but what has become more important to me is the physiology of what's happening with me, what's happening with my body, the psychology of that. I used to think psychology was like 75% of trading. Never could I be so wrong. For me personally, and it's different for everybody, it's probably 90 or 95% of my success in trading is paying attention to that psychology and managing those emotions. I have tinnitus, which, if you're not familiar with that term, what that is a ringing that you develop in your ears. And there's probably 6, 7, 8 different reasons why it occurs. Fortunately, my tinnitus is tied to stress. So I was in seeing a chiropractor a few months back saying, hey, you know, doc, I figured out where the tinnitus is coming in. I need a little bit of help. So after a couple of sessions, you know, it's working well, it's reducing. I said, look, we need to stop. I do not want you to eliminate the tinnitus completely. He looks at me, you know, kind of bewildered. He said, well, why is that? And I said, well, the nature of my work is that it's very important for me to understand when I'm feeling stress. It's a message to something that's going on that I need to pay attention to. And what I'm getting around to, and I'm being very circuitous about this, is that we might visually look at charts, but there's a lot more processing that goes on visually. And I very much look to my breath. I start looking to that ringing in my ears when a tenseness begins, because I may be seeing something visually, but there's more that my trading mind is processing that gives me the heads up that, well, maybe you want to look at this a little bit further before you make this next trading decision. And that doesn't just have to do with entering trades. This has to do with being in the trade and managing that trade successfully. If I'm in a trade and I see a pullback, that doesn't create fear in me. What my reassignment to that, when I see that pullback, is I start adding to that position, because I know after that pullback, provided my analysis is correct, and you know what? My analysis today is correct more times than it's not. That means that position is going to get bigger faster. Already working with Randy, I've doubled my account twice. I'm working on my third time. So I guess I'm kind of here with a little bit of an alumni and a little bit of, you know, still a student. I'm not saying I've got this figured out by any means. I still make mistakes, and I have no problems with making mistakes. That's an opportunity for me to further tune the system, so to speak. That's it, Randy.
Thank you. Thank you. And what I'd like to say about this is when I first met Ron, he would not have been able to speak like this, okay? The key is, what I want you to hear is that now at this particular moment in time, when he makes mistakes, he's no longer having to be perfect, okay? He's not having a mistake as a character assassination, and what you notice is he really focuses on the physiology of the emotion. And that's fundamentally what we're about to get into. But first, we have a comment, and here's from Phil. To realize that we are emotion and thought makes us a human being. To be less makes us dead. To embrace and observe those thoughts and emotions allows us to be aware and work towards change. Yes. we spend most of our time being unaware that we have the power to change and control who we are. Randy has made my awareness, made me aware. Well, thank you. I'm honored. The key is, what I want you to understand is that what we're talking about right now is we're talking about emotion, and we're talking about emotion's impact on trading. Okay, and we're recognizing that emotions, being biological, they're also built for short-term survival gain, and that's why they take over. They could care less about your long-term affair with your trading account. All they care about is, like, when they feel stress, they don't differentiate uncertainty from saber-toothed tiger. So when you're at entry points or wherever you feel the pang of uncertainty suddenly, and understand, saber-toothed tigers were here 12,000 years ago. This has not had any enough time to be bred out of our system. So you're seeing that, and this is something that literally you have to learn to reconstruct, but to do that, you're going to have to learn to manage the intensity first. And this is from Pat. Could this answer also be, our body is biologically and psychologically reacting to any given situation? I consider psychology to show up late for the date, okay? But yeah, your body is reacting in a biocognitive way to whatever stresses are in the environment, and you will develop those. There's a illustration that I used later on where the eye is seeing a snake, okay? And what happens is it triggers an entire response that is absolutely automatic. And before you know it, the guy's thinking crazy thoughts. He psychologically becomes a pretty fragile human being based in fear, but the first thing that happened is fear had to show up to dictate thinking. I hold that when René Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am," launching the rationalistic tradition and trying to believe that our being is about our ability to think, this is one of the worst things in the world. The Buddhists have another saying. They say, "I am." Now, who is this I? I am a much more better proponent of that than anything else. Okay, and this is from Paul. And nothing triggers the perception of deviation from a standard sensorial pattern than pulling the trigger. It's a good one. I'll tell you what, though, a lot of people who have been able to learn to manage that, and that's one of those things that has to be learned. And the biggest thing that separates a struggling trader from a professional trader is the fear of missing out of when after you manage the trade. This is when Hitesh was talking earlier, when he's managing the trade and he has a structure, okay? And that what happens is, it's spent a lot of time below, it's gone down to the red, it's been going against him, it's flirted with the, it's been flirting around with the stop, and he might, it gets stopped out, you're sitting there, and then it starts trending, it finally gets up into the black, and suddenly there is an urgency, a fear, that if you don't take that profit right now, it's going to go away. That's the fear that ultimately stops marginal traders from becoming professional traders. And then what happens when they step back out of the situation and that fear is no longer gripping them, they say, darn, shoot, my analysis was right. The structure is saying that thing's going to go up and hit at least these targets right here. And darned if it doesn't do it 6, 7, 8 times out of 10. That's like flipping coins and getting 50% all the time. You're just going to win. Now, what we know also is that this biologicalness you're looking at creates the quality of mind. So now you're going, wow, let's take a look at an emotion. Some of you see this slide a zillion times, and you're going to see it a zillion more times. Okay? It is right here that starts showing the way that you start managing emotions. You start saying, okay, how can I interrupt emotion? How can I manage the emotion? How can I create emotion? The thing is what most people do very common in a number of the people in this workshop tonight will have been videotaped. Okay, and I use videotaping with my individual clients at some moment. I'm getting earlier and earlier in the using of videotape, because what happens is they'll say, Randy, I have no idea what happened to me. I just got sucked down this emotional vortex and I got spit out. I don't know how it happened. When you videotape them, and actually Hitesh is one of the ones who actually helped me with this greatly because of he started using WebEx, and he could have screens and himself on it. What happens is that when you do a review and you have videotaped yourself over a period of time, what you're doing is you will find out when you feel the vortex of emotion sucking you into the black hole, there are enormous precursors to that moment. With the video, you can see it happen, and what you'll see is the arousal of the emotion. You will see the body preparing for fight, flight. It feels as though it's under stress because you haven't trained the brain to be able to differentiate uncertainty from fear. And what you'll see is you'll see it trigger. You will see your muscles tensing up, and like if you're watching your video, you're tapping a pencil, you're tapping, you've got that fast leg going, and you're just rocking back and forth in your seat, okay? And you become totally fixated. Man, you're shot at the moment of fixation. That's so dangerous. What you're looking at is arousal. You're looking at the blood pressure beginning to shoot up. You're looking at the pulse beginning to shoot up. That's what the trader in my office this morning was doing. Is he actually had, he had it attached to his earlobe, and we were talking, and he was literally training himself to not let that thing get into the red. And he was also learning that he could not use pressurized speech. The moment that he experienced pressurized speech, he knew that he was cooked. Okay, and he was learning to use a softer tone of voice, and he talked through his trades. This is all part of the training that we do. So you get this revving up. The key is that is the place where emotions are manageable. Particularly with the videotaping, what you do is you actually find out going, okay, these are the moments that I see that I get in trouble. I can actually back out from that moment, and I can be prepared. I can mentally rehearse, emotionally rehearse for that moment, so that when I enter it, I'm not startled and I'm not ambushed. And I begin to be able to manage it by breath, let's just say by breath, so that you short-circuit the ability of the emotion to rev up by holding breath or by rapid breathing, and you start beginning bellows breathing, which absolutely throws CO2 on the smoldering flames of fear. Okay, so you're there. If you don't do that, there comes a switch, and it is literally a switch that goes, and it goes pop, and all of a sudden the adrenals are involved, and suddenly the chemistry of that emotion starts pulsing through the body. At that feeling state, if you get to that moment, the very best thing that you can do is step away from your computer. The chemistries in your system, it's going to take at least 45 minutes to burn out. If you resist it, the more it will persist. So the key is that you're no longer in a place where you can volitionally manage that emotion. You could do before arousal or during arousal, but the moment that the switch is flipped, you've got to get up, you've got to go for a walk, you've got to do something that starts burning the chemistry out of the body. I have a lot of my traders who will use small trampolines. They will use all sorts of exercise equipment, so that what they can do is they can say, okay, I can begin to feel this stuff building up in my body. It's still arousing. It's not taking over mine. And what they will do is they will run. They will do whatever they can. They will burn the chemistry out. And I'm not saying that's the perfect way of doing it, but what we're looking for is ways of producing success in the management of the biology, the physiology of an emotion right now. That's what we're doing. When that emotion goes through arousal, hits feeling, understand that feeling, it's no longer cranking up. It's in the body. When it's in the body, the feeling causes you to think with certainty in whatever direction that emotion is taking you. That direction it's taking you is called emotional motivation. Attack, avoid, approach. Only if you have a really well-trained brain and mind Is it going to go down the avenue of approach? You know avoidance by hesitation. You know avoidance by getting out of trades early. You know attack by overtrading. You know attack by revenge trading. So there you are. You've got that. Now, the other one that you have to learn to manage is arousal, okay, so that feeling doesn't take over. And remember, feeling is the part where it's the emotional chemistry. Your thinking is being altered at that moment. And when you have freedom of emotion, you are intentionally building an emotional cocktail based on the emotions of disciplined impartiality. You're patient, you're disciplined, you're impartial. That's the cocktail that's producing the mind that can trade in probabilities rather than trying to get out of the burning barn. The fourth one is meaning, and this is where you really have to be able to regulate the emotion. If you can't regulate the emotion, you will never get to mind. Mind is where you find the beliefs, okay? And that's the piece that you have to get to ultimately to transform the mind that trades. That's pretty much what Ron was talking about, okay? The temperament is something I don't deal with. That's genetics, and that's past my pay grade, okay? Here's a comment from Hitesh. Before I took Randy's course, I had fear of uncertainty, fear of losing, and was not able to take the risk. Now, when a setup comes up, it's more like where I am going to enter the trade and how I'm going to manage the trade. And Hitesh goes on, this is the direct outcome from Randy's course. Well, thank you. What happens is that Hitesh also, what he's done is Hitesh knew how to trade. He did not know how to manage the emotion. The moment that he figured out how to manage the emotion, he was off to the races, okay? And he now uses, he would say that he uses a very mechanical way of entering these trades, and it's almost a slam dunk. But understand is that, he's a professional trader. And it took him a while, but with the emotional state management, and also Hitesh had something up over a lot of the Western folks, is Hitesh is out of a Hindu culture where bellows breathing was a normal thing to be taught even as a kid. Now, he wasn't taught very well because he had lived in a high-stress professional family, but the point is that the whole notion of breath being very calming was already in his ethos, okay? Okay, and this is from John. The first time I videotaped myself while working with Randy, I was amazed at how I could see my emotions take over based on what the trade was doing. When the trade was going where I wanted, I was relaxed. When it started to go against me, you could see the discomfort in my body and face. It was remarkable to see, and I had no idea this was happening. Yes, thank you very much. That's the thing, is that I start teaching mindfulness, the observer, at this moment. When you walk away from here, what I'm hoping you do, we're going to do some exercises about how to breathe, and then ultimately what I'm going to be asking of you is that you go and you videotape yourself. You start noting the point, and they're pretty darn easy. The point where people have collapses in trading, I'm going to tell you, there's only a few, okay? And that pulling that trigger, I actually would say when you first start opening your computers and looking at charts, the urgency to trade is there, you've got problems, okay? You're not in the mind to trade. You're not fit to trade at that moment. At the moment of entry, and then, the trade management is a complicated affair because it starts with, it really starts with order fulfillment. Then it starts with when the thing starts going against you or when the trade starts going for you. Both can be dangerous. And either when you're stopped out or when you hit your target, there is a very strong way that you have to manage the mind. The first layer is you're trying to manage fear, okay? But to the trader who's beyond that and is sabotaging good work, what he's looking at is the work of euphoria, where he begins to understand, no, you can't feel good either. Okay, the moment you feel good, you've got good opium grade stuff, endorphins going into your system, and it's going to cloud your thinking, and you're not going to think there's as much risk there as you can. We now have what we need to do, what we need to know how to work with an emotion. And ultimately then what you see is suddenly you start seeing emotion as biology, breath and energy, arousal, are interrelated in the expression of an emotion. This is big news, guys. This tells you, okay, now I know how to start disrupting an emotion. And by the way, this work is based on the work of Herbert Benson. He's a cardiologist at Harvard University, and what he did is he started studying Hindu yogis. And he was studying them because they were claiming they could do things that Western science said they couldn't. Well, he got them in his laboratory, and sure as shooting, those yogas were doing exactly what Western science was saying they couldn't do. They were altering their blood pressure. They were doing all sorts of pulse rate work. They were doing all sorts of things. What he did is he stripped out the spirituality and began to look and say, what are these guys doing? And what he realized is that they were doing what he would call diaphragmatic breathing, what I would call bellows breathing, and muscle relaxation. Okay? Because what he did is he said, okay, now we've got this thing, and we can begin to control the energy and emotion this way by breath. And then he started saying, okay. Then it comes down to saying, okay, well, what's the emotional signature? Okay? And this is really important for you to know. This is important, and this is why I like with the people that you've heard say, yeah, when I videotaped myself, it was a shocker. What you're doing is you're looking at you are looking at the emotional signature. That signature is going to have a breathing style. And if you're a fear-based trader, what you've got is you're holding your breath or you're panting. Okay, shallow breathing. That's got it, and that's fanning the fuel. That's fanning the fire of emotion. It will also have a tension signature. You will have very specific places in your body that have tension. Okay? Whether or not it's jaws, eyes, thighs, gut, whatever, there's going to be a signature that can become a telltale sign to you. That's saying, okay, this thing's, and you're catching the emotion in the arousal stage right now, and you can relax it. Then you get into fixation. And that's the dangerous part. That's when you start getting really tightly focused tunnel visioned on your computer. And if you don't stop that, you're in trouble. It's kind of like at our house, what happens is that my dog and I go for walks, and he will become enormously fixated when he hears and sees a deer. If I do not take his eyes off that deer, that dog's going to be gone. Okay? It's history. Same thing with the trader. And like when I was quoting Danny, from what he had told me, is that he became fixated at the moment of entry and order fulfillment, and he knew that he had to break the fixation at that moment. It's done by breath. Okay? Okay, 2 comments on breath. Here's from Pat. Randy, I have found having and following a set trading plan and using the power breath first during the execution of the trade, it helps me keep my wits about me. I'm just following my plan. Yeah, nice. Not nice. All are equal. Well, you know, they're all equal, but I'll be honest with you. Giving my choice, I would rather execute from a peak performance mind and get the probability of winning rather than to execute poorly and take a loss. And yes, you're right. The thing is that ultimately the way this thing works is you are coupling and learning a new behavior at moments where you're trading. You're learning to use your breath in those moments to make sure that you're not going to a reactive learned pattern that takes you out of trading mind. Okay, and here's from David. You touched on breathing before and its importance on managing emotions. One of the things I've learned from your program that I've never forgotten is the fact that all emotions have a certain breathing pattern, and in order to manage them or change them, you need to do is interrupt that pattern by simply taking a deep breath. Yes, 3 deep breaths, 10 deep breaths, it really works. You're interrupting you're interrupting the steam engine before it gets ahead of steam. That's what you're doing. So what you're looking at here, when you start looking at this video, when you start looking at your self-trading, what you're going to do is you're going to write down what your breathing style is. You're going to write down the tension. You're going to write down your fixation in the moments of the trading cycle that they occur to you, so they can become part of your psychological plan to say, I need to interrupt, I need to use this breathing skill. And this is where the disruption happens. This is something that you have to do. Okay, now, here's a good comment. This is from Ted. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Well, he was a very wise man. And the truth is that if you grasp that the only thing that you have is the moment you're in, then you can trade well. If you're in the future worrying about your trading losses, you're not going to trade well. If you're in the past about remembering traumatic memories, you're not going to trade well. Okay, 2 more comments. Here's from Hitesh. Last week, I was on the sideline for 3 days as there was no setup, and on the 4th day, I got 3 trades. Knowing when not to trade is the key to protect your psychological capital. Absolutely. 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 There could not be said better. The key is that there is no place that a professional trader is being pushed to jump and chase into a trade. The key is that when a guy like Hitesh is telling you that he doesn't take many trades, okay, but the thing is that he has so much confidence in the trades that he does take, he's got the sizing appropriate to that, and he can manage and do what he needs to do, but he's keeping his psychology there. Here's from Paul. Like Hitesh, I concentrate more on the not losing money, finding myself reliving all the losses of the past rather than the experience and satisfaction of all the successes of the past. Yeah. The imbalance to the negative is what has me frozen and I'm unable to pull the trigger. Well, this is called orphan, and we're not going to get to orphan this evening, but the key is you're talking about how do I go about managing the fear that orphan has? Who do I need to become that orphan trusts me to manage uncertainty? And what that really means is usually we have usually some darkness that we have to encounter, and we realize that ultimately that we become responsible for what I would call re-engineering, re-parenting that wounded part of ourself that has fear. The first stage is to be able to regulate the biology of the fear, because you'll never get to the mind where you can do the work if you can't manage the biology of the fear. Okay? What I want to do is I want to go over breathing, and we're going to use it, and we're going to use it in such a way that you're going to be using it tomorrow, and I'm hoping that you either have a mirror or videotape yourself. The first thing is right now, allow yourself to say, you know something, I'm going to observe my body. I'm going to observe just the coming and going of breath. And the first thing what I want you to do is as you're sitting in the chair, whatever you're doing, I want you to notice the way that you're normally breathing. If you're a normal Westerner, you are breathing in such a way that promotes anxiety. Okay, that's normal. And that your medicine cabinet, 60% of that medicine cabinet will be there to be able to regulate externally the anxiety you're experiencing from breathing in such a way that is activating anxiety. Often when I first start training people in diaphragmatic breathing or bellows breathing, it is so unnatural that they don't know how to do it. But what I want you to notice is that in this diagram, particularly on figure 1, inhaling, I want you to see the diaphragm, it's pointing down. I want you to imagine that there's a fireplace bellows in your abdominal area, and you have that bellows and you literally have the tip of it pointed up toward the nose, and what you're doing is with that bellows in your gut, what you're doing is you're pulling air down with your diaphragm. It goes down into your belly and your lower back, then it expands to chest. Okay? Then you hold for a moment, and the releasing is done by letting go of the pressure on the diaphragm, and it starts moving up, and the air just starts naturally moving out of the body. So ultimately in this, we can start saying, well, okay, pull air into the nostrils, down the windpipe, into the belly with your bellows, expand to chest, hold, release slowly, let the diaphragm relax, let the chest, let the lungs just kind of collapse, let the air go out of mouth or nose. And then we'll sweeten it a little bit and say, okay, now what we're going to do, we're just going to cut out the words and we're going to say air to belly, expand to chest, hold, release slowly. Air to belly, expand to chest, hold, release slowly. And notice this is almost like the tide. The tide comes in, the tide goes out, and there is a moment where the tide is holding, and then it lets go and it leaves again. Your breath is a lot like that. What I want you to notice is that at first it may seem unnatural. I get questions all the time, is Randy, are you expecting me to breathe this way all the time? Well, every time you become aware of it, yeah. And the real key is, no, I'm not asking you to breathe this way all the time, only when you need a calm state of mind. And most people need a calm state of mind, not just when they're trading, but really to be able to have critical thinking and problem-solving skills in the rest of their life also. So it's an air into belly, expanded chest, hold, release slowly. The other questions are this, well, Randy, I take this yoga stuff and they do this more like on steroids where they're getting the abdomen and it's just pushing all the air out. Should I be doing it on steroids? No. All we're looking for is okay enough. We're just simply looking to gently take the bellows to expand it, to pull air into belly, expand to chest, to hold, to release slowly. And you go back to homeostasis. Other people will say, well, Randy, I've been taught various ways. Some of these places I'm learning how to do this teach me to breathe through the nose. Other people tell me to breathe through the mouth. Which one should I do? Which one's right? Neither are right. I know people who breathe through their nose. I know people who breathe through their mouth. I do both simply because I had my nose broken a number of times when I was a teenager, and I often have really congested sinuses, and I cannot breathe through my mouth, through my nose. And I often end up having to breathe with my mouth. So it's really however is the best for you. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. What there is a need to produce an habituation and a change in a very old pattern of breathing in such a way that promotes anxiety. So your air into belly, expand to chest, hold, and release. Okay, we're going to call this a practice. We're going to add one more thing to it, in our skills building. We're going to add one more thing to it, and we're going to start using it. What I also want to add is a sense of body relaxation. Okay? If you've ever been to a Zen garden, you can really imagine the sense of relaxation. When you're breathing air into belly, expanding the chest, you're holding and you're releasing, what we're also going to do is we're going to release the tension. Your tension, whether or not it's in the shoulders, the jaw, the neck, the eyes, and you're going to let that tension drain, drain, drain until you're loose and limp. Okay? So now we can say, okay, now I'm noticing the tension, in my body, and I know that when I release the breath, I'm also going to release the tension. So let's practice this just a couple more times. Air to belly, expand to chest, hold, release slowly, and as you release, let the tension in your body drain, drain, drain like honey from a jar, until you're loose and limp, loose and limp, like a rag doll. Air to belly, expand to chest, hold, release slowly, and release the tension in your body. Let it drain, 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 like honey out of a jar, until you're loose and limp, loose and limp, like a rag doll. Okay, what we have now, we have the sequence of a behavior that you need to train your body to. Okay? It's not going to seem natural at first, but the truth is that we're going to learn how to do it. Now, what we're going to do here is I want us to start remembering something. What we're going to do is we're going to show you that you can train this to stress moments. What Herbert Benson did that was so remarkable and what was genius of him is that what he recognized is that the diaphragmatic breathing and the draining of tension from the body could not coexist with the maintenance of fear or anxiety. He recognized that with calm breathing and relaxation, it was going to create calm mind. Calm mind had a completely different way of solving problems. Okay? And what I want you to, I'm giving you a number of images, and I'm asking you, you can become angry the moment that you had revenge trading, you just got all upset, you're going to get your damn money back, and or you became like a deer in headlights. You just sat there and froze and just got creamed. You couldn't do anything. Or you saw that thing go against you and you just felt like shooting yourself and making it all disappear. Or you might feel like you got sucked into a vortex. Just, you were sitting there and you were fine and dandy and you could just feel you're being sucked into the vortex of fear. Or you could feel like it's like a roller coaster. You know, the thing is oh God, oh no, no, no. What I want you to do is remember the exact memory. And the truth is they tend to be pretty consistent, where there are folks who have real serious hesitation problems at entry. People have serious problems somewhere along the process of managing the trade. Okay? And what you're doing is you're saying, okay, and then you also have serious problems at the moment of loss, where you begin beating self up. And I can promise you, I've never talked to a trader yet who has found that beating self up produced a better trader. So I want you to, or you just, I've actually, I have a video of a trader where what happens is he literally is trading, he makes a mistake, he takes a loss, and you see him get up, pick his chair up, hurl it against the wall, and you see the chair explode. He takes one of the legs and he hurls it and shatters one of his screens. The good news is this trader now has emotional control, and he's a very fine trader. But when I first started, is that whole notion of mistake was something far and beyond anything that he could tolerate. He was going to shoot that computer. What I want you to do is say, okay, what is consistently the memory that most represents the biggest problem I have in my trading? Okay? You know, is it the anger? Is it the fear? You know, is it just being frozen? Is it just the total anxiety? Or is it I just get euphoric and I become a gambler? Or is it I feel like killing and blowing up the, I actually have people take up their computers, throw them in the trash can, and later that day their wife looks and goes, had a bad day. Or you just feel like blowing yourself up. I'm a victim, nothing is new. I might as well just crawl in a hole and die. What I want you to do is think of and recall that. And I want you to say, okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, what was the breathing signature? What was the tension signature? Okay? You start saying, okay, I remember that, and I can remember holding my breath. I can remember the tension. I can remember what parts of my body that was in. And if you haven't got it right now, tomorrow when you're going through this, or the next day, I want you to come to this memory. Okay? I have a comment here, and this is from Gina. With me, it's a combination. Yes, I'm sure it is. Okay? A lot of people have that mixed emotion, that mixed bag, where the motivations are both angry and fearful simultaneously. And it just really depends on, which one gets there first is what direction your body follows. But Gina, for you, what you're doing is, what I'm asking you to do is you're going through the moment and you're saying, okay, it's a combination. A couple of these photographs make up the mix that I have, and that's okay. Okay? You don't have to be one pure, you don't have to be, in anger where you're attacking the threat. Basically, there's just one way of doing it, attacking. You're revenge trading or over trading. In avoidance, what happens is you are freezing, you are running, you are literally giving up, okay, or you're hiding. Those are the subroutines that work within those. And what we're doing is we're just simply isolating them and saying, okay, what combination fits me? And for Gina, for you, if it's a number, just have them down, and you write them down. Okay, sometimes a deer and sometimes revenge. Yeah, so you've got they're side by side for you, Gina. Okay, and the key is you may want to isolate it because fundamentally what's happened at the level of a neuron, that thing's tripping and it's either going down attack or avoid. Okay, and you may want to either isolate one memory or combine them both because it may be just a real sense of flux before the emotional motivation takes a charge and takes you one way or the other. But you hold the memory, okay? Everybody in here, that's what I'm asking you to do. And if you don't have a memory right now, get one, okay? You'll find it tomorrow. You'll find it in the next time you have a problem in trading. So now we've got that, okay? Now, what I want you to do is, and this is something where you don't have to be lying down today, but what happens is I tend to like either you're lying down. I'm showing this illustration because this shows what I'm talking about with diaphragmatic breathing, is that if you have a board on you, what you're looking to do is you're moving that belly, with your bellows about an inch, okay? And that you're not doing these. When you see these yogic guys basically ballooning up their bellies and then just collapsing it so that they look like an emaciated woman, that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is this gentleness we're talking about here, about an inch, where you're moving your abdominal structure like that, the bellows just moving you back and forth. What I like about laying down is it allows you to really allow the floor or the bed to basically hold you. And it allows you a deeper sense of letting go of tension. When you're in a chair, the truth is there are going to be neck muscles and there are going to be shoulder muscles, there are going to be gut muscles and thigh muscles that just simply need to be there to keep you in a semi-erect position. But what I'm asking you to do is literally in your seat or on the ground, wherever you are, what I want you to do is go back to your breathing. And you're going to start out and you're going to go, okay, I am going to move air into belly, expand chest, hold, release, drain, drain, drain the tension. And as you do that, you're going to do that several times, and then what I want you to do in the screen of your mind, I want you to bring up the memory of that, okay? And what happens is you have already had a memory of this where you have put this thing as, oh, this is an 8 out of 10. This was a 9 out of 10. What I want you to do is to do nothing about intervening into the memory, except that what you're going to do, instead of focusing on the hesitation, focusing on the emotion of fear, I want you to focus on your breath. As you watch the memory, it's air to belly, expand to chest, hold, release. Air to belly, and you're moving that belly about an inch. Expand to chest, hold, release. Let the tension drain, drain, drain like honey out of a jar until you're loose and limp like a rag doll. As you hold the memory up, you're not hyper-focused on it. You may want to push the memory out just a little bit, What I want you to do is to be able to feel it, but I want you to notice that you can take the memory and you can feel it escalate, but the thing is, you do not have to get sucked into that vortex. You can say, no, I'm going to volitionally start breathing diaphragmatically again, air to belly, expand chest, hold, release. Release the tension. Let it drain, 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 like honey out of a jar, until you're loose and limp, loose and limp, like a rag doll. What I want you to start noticing as you're doing this, you're still holding the memory up, you're still maintaining the breath. All you are doing is you are volitionally managing breath, okay, while you're holding anxious memory or revenge memory. What I want you to notice is you do not have to get sucked into that circuit. What you can do is you are volitionally stepping back, you're observing the body, you're managing the symptomology, the physiology of that emotion by breath, by tension, and by fixation. You're fixating on your breath rather than on the urgency of it. And what I want you to notice is what happens to the emotional mind. What happens to the emotional mind as you do that? A lot of people, there's one of the guys in here, when we first started working, we could not get the breathing done. We had to move to mindfulness. We had to move to kind of the higher order thinking without being able to get the habituation down that's required to retrain God knows how many decades of breathing in such a way and tension in such a way that promotes, when you see memory, okay, that it promotes the anxiety. You go to the anxiety, you begin to anticipate negative possibility. Or you go back to a traumatic memory, and what happens is that suddenly your ability to act collapses. You freeze. And what we're doing is we're saying, no, you don't have to go there. For you to have come to action, feeling would have taken over. And what we're doing is we're catching this at the level of arousal now. We're calming the fire of the emotion down volitionally by breath and relaxation, and altering the fixation that we have on the memory. Okay? And as you do this, you're breathing, you're relaxing, you're focusing on your breath, you're holding the memory though. Okay? And I know it's a balance between being able to focus on memory and hold to breath. Okay? At the same time is that this is a skill that you develop over time. The guys who I work with and have, it really takes, ultimately, it takes about 6 months to retrain body to this. People who work with me, they have to commit to the reps, they have to commit to the training. And what they recognize is that they can manage the fear, and then they realize that the only thing they had to fear was fear itself. The memory no longer was so highly charged. And once you do that, you can start working with the belief system behind it. So, at this, and here I want to hear from you guys about your experience and how you're going to use this tomorrow, is by managing breath and tension in the body. What did you notice about the power of emotion? Okay? By taking the emotional fire from your dragon, its ability to engulf you into emotional reactivity is managed. You now become the master of whether or not that fire is going to go someplace rather than the dragon. So what was your experience, and how do you use this process? Some of you are going to be using this process right now already on a pretty darn well skilled level. Others are going to be, well, I'm still working with it. Let me know how it's working for you. I'd love for somebody to take the mic or talk. Okay, this is David. The power of the emotion dissipates considerably. Yeah, it becomes manageable. And imagine many of you will already have other skills, other tools available that when you dissipate the energy, the emotion, it allows you to bring these other skill sets online. It's a powerful thing. Okay. Now, so now, oops. What do we got here? Okay, this is Phil. it's a huge personal responsibility to claim our emotional state and manage our breathing. Yeah, Phil, that's so well said. Is what happens is, do you remember in the very beginning of this program we started showing people who were trying to put their emotions in a box, and then they were putting a bag over their head. And what happens is that ensures that the emotion's going to bite you. And you're sitting there trying to be a manly man or a womanly woman, and you're saying, you know something, I'm going to conquer this by willpower. I'm going to make myself not feel. And it doesn't work that way, friends. Trading markets don't care what you think and what you believe. They care simply that they're there. You're the one that's bringing all the caring. You're bringing everything. Okay. Here's David. The thinking clears up for better analysis and execution. There you go. You know, suddenly what happens is by managing the right brain, it frees you up to be able to use left brain know-how and actually use it to execute. Okay? Okay, and this is Rolf. Without managing breath, in no way could I get the green light on the EM Wave 2. Rolf is the guy that I was working with in my office today, okay? And it was really great because what he was doing is he literally was working as we were talking. He is working to manage it, and he's really working to produce that green light. And he truly changed my opinion about using stuff like that and training people to be able to manage. I used to think it was a crutch. Now I realize it's a tool, it's an aid that allows you to build. But yeah, you got it. And here's Charles. I had to make the image smaller and move further away to relax. That's okay. The truth is what happens is, you know, in real life, you have no business being 3 inches away from your trading screen. A lot of the people that I work with, what they do is they realize that once they're in the heat, what they're actually doing is they've got their keyboard and stuff like that, but they're backing away from their screens. They don't want to get sucked into that screen. Do you remember the photograph of the person being sucked into screen? It's the same thing as what they're doing is they're going, you know, the physicality, I can manage the physicality, and that physicality gives me some control over my emotion. It's kind of like, you know, recently my wife and I were at Lindenau Gorge, which is the largest gorge east of the Mississippi River, and there are places where you can walk right to the edge and you can look 2,500 feet down. And I'll tell you right now, when you start walking, it's a sheer rock face. It's not like, you know, the rock's not going to slip. You're sitting there. But I can tell you right now, I start getting about 2 feet from the edge of that cliff, and man, when I start getting myself at the edge of that cliff, I'm going to tell you, I'm pretty darn uncomfortable. Okay? My body just doesn't care what my mind thinks. In the same way, if you recognize your body's programmed like that, why not start taking advantage of it? And instead of getting 2 inches, 3 inches, a foot from your screen while you're in critical moments of trading, why not back out? Why not put some distance? As long as you've got your tools that you can get to, you're doing the same thing that you're doing in this exercise where I'm asking you to push the memory out. Okay? So, okay, what we're seeing is that this is a developed skill that is going to be very alien to the current biological process or pattern that your brain has established, and you're going to have to work to reestablish a new habit. Now, right now we're looking at an image of where a man is facing his dragon and actually recognizing the dragon actually has gift that he can give him. He's becoming the internal warrior rather than projecting his fears, his anger out into the world. He's realizing the fight has always been internal. What we're talking about today is not going to get you there. However, if you do not learn the emotional regulation skills here, you're not going to get to the mind where this other stuff is. This is skill one. It's absolutely essential. Nobody gets to the mind and starts working with it and changing it without being able to manage the emotion that creates mind. Okay? I want to do one more thing. What I want to do is I want to talk about something I've been using for a long time and something that either traders can use very successfully or doesn't work that well for them. Okay? If it doesn't work that well for you, okay, no problem. Okay? The main thing is that you are using skills to calm the body down. When we start talking about safe place imagery, what we're doing is we're talking about the way the brain structures memory and recalls memory, and we're beginning to manipulate the way the brain does that. In safe place, what we're doing is we're having a memory of a time that you felt calm, okay, that you felt safe, that you were tranquil, much like the image of the guy sitting on the dock, and there's a rock that splashed and he can see the wavelets, but he's sitting there calm. It's that kind of memory that can have enormous power if your mind is ready to work with symbology. Okay? It's like, for instance, I'm going to give you an image that I use as my safe place. Just so happens that we're big fans of an area in North Carolina mountains of Linville Gorge and the Wilson Creek area. And one day when I was camping in the Wilson Creek area, I came upon, out in the middle of nowhere, way off the beaten path, an incredible waterfall. I'm like a 300-foot waterfall. And when I walked up to the waterfall, nobody was there. And if you've ever been in North Carolina going to these waterfall tours, you realize that they're tourist attractions. And this was just different. Man, this was raw. I was there. And over time, you know, what happened is I took my wife there, and we started going there periodically through the year. And literally what we could do is we would walk up to the very edge of this waterfall. We could lay down on the rocks, and we could hear the water rushing past us and going over the edge. And we could feel the cool breeze being pulled by this creek as it came past us. We could hear the wind in the trees, the chatter of the leaves. And if you've ever been in the North Carolina mountains, there is a smell associated with those mountains that just, it's really rhododendron dirt. And you can feel the negative ions created by the water as they rush over and stuff like that. And you're looking up and you're going, oh my gosh, this is timeless. I can feel the sun on my body sitting on this rock. I can lay down on the rock and I can feel the warmth in my back. And we would just deeply fall, and we'd be holding hands with each other as we laid on our backs, just listening, being present into this moment. And ultimately, in the same way that I've described this, what I want you to notice is sensorially, I have described this thing so that you smell, that you taste, that you feel, that you see, that you hear this event. And I'm betting that if you're not an urban dweller, that you have experienced, you were able to listen to the memory, and it became associated with deep states of calm, where your pulse rate went down, and your tension relaxed, and your mind was calm. Did that happen to anybody? Yes, it did. Okay, the thing is, what you're doing is you're restructuring memory. Actually, I took this from a photograph of my son and I camping at this place, and I realized, you know something, what I'm going to do is I still have the photograph there, and I don't have really a photograph of my wife and I there, but I've recreated the memory for she and I to be there rather than my son and I. Because it just so happens that she is a safe person within my sphere, okay? And this whole area produces tranquility for me. I will have that image and I look at it, okay? It becomes an anchor. Not only do I look at it in a visual way, and it becomes an anchor that allows me to hear, to feel, and to create the memory of that and the emotion of calm, I can also hear the water. I can close my eyes, I can hear the water, I can feel my wife's hand, I can feel the warmth, and I'm there. I will use that about, I don't know, 20 or 30 times a day. Okay? What I'm asking of you is for you to find the same. I'm asking of you to imagine that what you're doing is you're finding an imagery, you're finding an image like this. And again, a lot of you, if you've worked with me, you will have at least tentatively worked on this. Whether or not you have it functioning where you can actually use it to help calm mind down, this is another issue, okay? But the key is what we're doing, and what I want to do, what you've done basically is you're using memory now. And later on in my work, if you've been around my memory enrichment work and stuff like that, you know that I'm really strongly into memory and strongly into the feeling states associated with that memory to bring forth states of mind. Here we're just doing that. Okay, we're having this is from Chris. Square Top Mountain, Green River, Lake, Wyoming. Yep. Chris, you probably have about as good a place to have safe place imagery as any person on the on the face of the earth. And it ought to be your screensaver. It ought to be, you ought to be having sounds of it. You ought to, I know people, particularly like if they have beach type things, they will have, you know, they will have rocks. I know people who have literally while they're trading, they have the sounds of the surf. What they're doing is they're finding ways of reinforcing the memory that allows them to produce calm states. And like with me, like the sound of water is really important with me. Okay, the sound of wind in trees is very important to me. The sound of tree frogs at night. All these things have powerful associations, and I record them. And I live out in the middle of the country, and I have cicada, I have crickets, I have tree frogs, and I have created recordings of these things that I use. And what I'm looking for you guys to do is to find the same thing. Okay, this is from Chris. It's my chapel. Yeah. And what I would say is the place where Dolores and I go and sit by the waterfall is one of my favorite chapels also. And there's a sanctuary there. Okay, and this is from Kevin. Kevin, in the beginning, I labored to become disciplined in breathing correctly to lessen the internal energy. Now there is a daily routine, 10 to 15 minutes before the opening bell or even during the opening minutes. I remove myself from the office and literally deep sink into my mind to embrace the quiet with deep breathing while smelling the beach and hearing the waves. Near the end, I call up my A-team, that's more advanced work, to prepare my trader's state for the pending uncertainty and relish every minute of it. Yeah, no, I'm going to tell you something. There's a trader who's moved a long ways. Okay? But what I want you to hear is that what Kevin's talking about, and this is what I prefer, but I'm interested in a trader being able to manage mine. The breathing is happening, the relaxation is happening. He's also got the sounds, he's got all sorts of things going on that allows him to associate safe place. Understand, it's not necessarily a visual that Kevin's using. Listen to the sound he's using. If you listen to me, you hear that the sounds become enormously important to me. Okay? And now it's not for me because I had my nose broken so many times, but smell is the most primitive sensorial input. If you can associate smell with the place, okay, like for instance with me, I associate that acid rhododendron smell of near mountain streams with that, and I'm saying I love that smell, and it just puts me right there. And the same, that's why perfumes are so damn powerful. Okay, as they're working on that smell, they evoke memories, they evoke symbols. What I'm asking of you, we're not going to do a safe place guided meditation here. What I'm asking you to do is to find a place in mind, in memory, of where you've experienced this thing like Kevin was talking about, this thing that Chris was talking about. And then what happens, you say, what is the elements of this thing that really evokes this thing for me? Is initially what I'm looking for is not just memory in your mind, hearing and seeing and feeling and tasting. What I'm asking you is to actually replicate some of the sounds in your trading room. Have a visual for sure, but hearing is a big deal for me. Okay, hearing the crickets, hearing the rushing water, hearing all that's really big time with me, and I'd much rather hear that than Squawk Box, than CNN, than stupid stuff that's just going to get you all agitated. what you're doing is doing everything you can to find a way, okay, safe place, I can build this sound system, I can build all sorts of this, and the tactileness, it's like if you have a beach scene and you're walking on sand and you're listening to the squish of water, it's just that whole letting go, it's that whole letting thing, just the holding. Oh, and Dolores and I, where we vacation is one of the top shell places in the world, and Dolores is a big sheller, and what happens, I have recordings of waves coming up on shells and the sound of the shells. And again, what we're doing is can you see the associations that we're using to build memory of serenity, of calm? And these are sounds that can be called up, that can be used to augment the skills of breathing and relaxation, but now you're beginning to use mind rather than just volitional skills of biology. Powerful stuff, friends. Powerful, powerful stuff. So here's what I'm asking of you. Is that what I'm looking for is for you to find a safe place. And by the way, this image right here was shot in Umbria, Italy, and it's sitting off the balcony of a place where we're looking, where there's been a big storm and we're looking at a double rainbow. And again, what happens, notice that this is our 25th wedding anniversary. We're holding hands, we're having a glass of Italian wine, we're having a great time. It's just, and our daughter's there, and it's just one of the best things in the world. What we're doing is we're taking that and we're going, okay, visually I see it. Okay, what are the sounds? What happens, I hear my daughter and I hear my wife talking, and my daughter just laughs and giggles, and God, it's just a delight. And we're looking over this thing. There's olive trees, there's grapevines, and God, it's just so beautiful. And the smells, if you've ever been in one, it's right after a fresh rainstorm, the rainbow's there, and everything's fresh. And we're sitting there, and I'm leaning up against a wall where I can feel the terracotta, and I'm looking out, and again the smell's there, the tastes, and even the taste of the wine becomes associated with all the scene, and you can begin to see, okay, I can really begin to see how I can use this to begin to build. All you're doing is you're restructuring memory in the mind. Okay? Okay, this is from Kent. Pat. I like using soft jazz and have a diffuser for dispensing orange essence that really kicks me into the zone during my trading day. It really works for me. Yeah, I would encourage you, this aromatherapy type of thing that he's talking about, and he's a professional jazz musician who does a lot of gigs. He's a very talented musician. What he's doing, though, is he's telling you what gets to him into that zone. Okay? He's saying that what I do, I can listen to the music, to soft jazz, and that's so associated with tranquility for me that it produced that state. Safe place doesn't have to be a physical place, friends. It's a state of mind. Okay? And then he's using aromatherapy, and again it goes back to just how primitive the olfactory glands are that allow us to have deeply primitive associations with states of calm. Again, this is Phil. Randy, what I love about your work, and of course trading, is that it's about who we're becoming and who we're growing into. Thanks so much, my friend. It's all changed my life. And Phil actually he's a professional trader, and he's a trader trainer. And what you're doing is he's able now to take this stuff. He knows how to trade. He's building a much more solid psychological base, and he's able to train his traders from this position now too. It works like this, okay? So what I want you to notice is all we've done is we've taken the 5 modalities of sensorials, okay? And what we're doing is we're saying all these things are necessary. And like what we were hearing is that it doesn't require a physical place. We hear one musician simply is sound. That safe place. It's within the sound, that safe place, and he's using smell in addition to that to create an ambiance, to create a mood. Other people, like Chris was talking, he's going to be at a lake. And what we're saying is there's going to be sensorial modalities. It may be the visuals, but it's a lot of stuff. And what you're doing is you're building the memory, and you're building associations that you're bringing into your trading room that are allowing you to be able to create the mind that's calm. Okay? Like I said, a lot of folks will, particularly if they're beach-oriented people, they're going to have sounds of surf. You know, I also, I'm a southern U.S. guy, and I love a good thunderstorm. And I have recordings of thunderstorms. You know, when the storm's brewing, while the storm's coming down, and as the storm is retreating. These are all things in the fresh air that happens after a big thunderstorm, which, by the way, we're going to be having here pretty soon. These are things that I use to create states of mind. You know, it's not so much that they have to be a picture. Any of these sensorial modalities of what we're looking for. Okay? Now, what I want you to do, okay, and this is the assignment that I'm going to be leaving you with, okay? What I'm looking for you to do is, do you remember that stressful memory that we had? Okay? Do you remember that you built the, and by the way, if you already have my work, you will notice that these are the worry inoculation type of things that I work with. But you don't need those. What happens is this right here is more than enough to be able to help you to be able to build, because what you're doing, you're saying, okay, I've got my memory, I'm going to build its intensity, I'm going to really focus on it. Then I have a thought disruption. You're going to see the word calm flash, flash, flash in mind. Air to belly, expanded chest, hold, release slowly, and you let the tension drain, 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 like honey out of a jar, until you're loose and limp. Then with breath, pull up safe place. Find that anchor, whether or not it's the sound, whether or not it's the smell, whether or not it's a visual. Pull it up. Feel the sensations. It's important. What happens is if you're just thinking about it, that doesn't work. I want you to feel the physiology of calmness. You establish that calm state of mind, and you say, what's different now? This is training, friends. Okay? What now becomes possible when you're in calm state of mind, what I want you to grasp out of this is that the mind that you're currently bringing to trading and its performance was an act of training that you didn't have anything to do with. You were just born into it, and it became default programming. What we're doing is, there's a choice here, friends. There's a choice. There's a choice that you can redesign the way the body works, and this is how you do it. So this is the one that you're going to. This is where the worry inoculation is, and I want you to be able to build these things, put the breathing, the relaxation, and the safe place together in the rigors of trading so that you can take it to your trading room, bring your sound, bring your smell with you, bring your sound, bring your visuals, okay? So ultimately, with the practice and the practice and the practice, this is going to become new normal. There comes a moment, the reason I use Placid Lake here is that's the way the mind looks when calm. This is when the observer looking out upon the scene has the ability to bring forward the parts of the mind needed to trade from a calm, disciplined, impartial mind. Okay? That's what we're looking to do. And what I'm asking is this, is that what I want you to understand is that managing emotion does not solve the problem, okay? But without it, you never get to the door of the mind. And what's going to be happening on Thursday is we go through the door of the mind. We go through and we develop on a much more significant level what mindfulness is. And what I find is mindfulness is one of those things that you really need to revisit. You really need to do. And by the way, this is actually a photograph of me looking at myself. And for the first time in my life, what I did is I was finding images from the internet, and I discovered that these images are now under images of trader's state of mind, of observation, is that they're embedded on Google now. It's just the darndest thing in the world. So I didn't even have to go to my hard drive to pull the image. I went to Google and I found an image of myself in this photograph representing mindfulness. On Thursday, we're looking at mindfulness, and we're beginning to see how to combine the calmness that allows you to get to the door of the mind, then developing the tool of mindfulness to open the door of the mind and to look in and see where all the action's at. So, it's the same time on Thursday, and we're at our 2 hours, so I'm not going to be taking any questions. But I thank each and every one of you for being here, and I'm clearly hoping that you're finding this where you're going, okay, this makes more sense now, this makes more sense now. I begin to see how to do this. And now we're going to take it a step deeper, and we're going to go into the second skill on Thursday. Okay? So I thank you for coming. I've had a great time, and you have been a joy to be with. Thank you.